It's October 8th at the Adams River in the interior of British Columbia, Canada. 2 million sockeye salmon have reached the end of an epic migration. The sockeye are exhausted, yet what lies just a few meters ahead is the greatest challenge of their life's journey. With the last of their energy, they'll swim one more river, make nests in the riverbed, and spawn. And then they'll die. Even in death, they nurture the river and this race of sockeye salmon. This is their time and place. Hundreds of thousands of salmon are clustered at a gravelly delta where the waters of the tiny Adams River flow into Tsútswecw Lake in the British Columbia interior. They're waiting for their cue to perform their life's final act. As they wait, their bodies are undergoing changes that will bring their spawn and sperm to maturity, so that they may create a new generation of sockeye. We've enhanced the red color of the salmon in these images so you can see the traffic jam at the delta. The biggest Adams River migration occurs once every 4 years. It's called the Dominant Run. And this year it's probably the biggest sockeye run in the world. Close to 2 million fish have made the journey to this river, and that's twice as many as expected. This bounty seems to reaffirm nature's ability to replenish her stocks. For the past 3 years, these sockeye have roamed across half of the North Pacific Ocean. They've mingled with other races and species of salmon. They've fed on plankton and built up their bodies with vital nutrients found in seawater. In the summer of their 4th year, like clockwork, Adams River sockeye head unerringly to Georgia Strait and the mouth of the Fraser River. They undergo astonishing change in short weeks here. Their color turns from sleek silver to the red and green hues of autumn in the forests. They adapt to fresh water in a process that's a huge challenge to their internal chemistry. Their scales are literally absorbed into their bodies. This leaves their skin uncovered and vulnerable to injury, infection, and parasites. While they were in salt water, the sex of each salmon wasn't important. Suddenly it matters. Males develop a humped back, a hooked snout, and sharp teeth. Their jaws turn white, their upper lips turn black. The bellies of the females swell with eggs. They all stop eating. For the rest of their lives, the 3-kilogram sockeye will survive on body fat, protein, and sheer endurance. From this point on, as they head inland, they run against a ticking clock. Their energy reserves will run out in less than 40 days. They must get home. The Fraser is a muddy river. Its steep canyon walls and dark forests line a waterway that alternates between a lazy flood and a treacherous torrent. About 350 kilometers from the ocean, the muddy Fraser is joined by the clear water of the Thompson River. For a while, the two currents run in parallel. The clear water is a signal to the Adams River sockeye to turn east into the Thompson. The landscape changes from thick forest to the parched grassland and ponderosa pine of the BC interior. The Thompson runs quickly over a shallow, rocky channel for most of its course. But at the Thompson Rapids, fish must hug the shore and climb the fast water almost in single file. This kayaker hasn't the strength to hold his place against the rush of water, but the strong, sleek salmon are designed for this challenge. The scent of home calls them forward into the calm waters of Tsútswecw Lake, and an easy 1-kilometer swim to the mouth of the Adams River. It's taken about 19 days to reach this point. They've been battered by waterfalls and rapids. They're exhausted. Their bodies are beginning to fail. Disease and infection have begun to work. But the most heroic part of their journey, its very purpose, is still ahead of them. Humans have turned the arrival of the sockeye at the Adams River into a festival. Thousands of sets of eyes will watch the last days of the salmon's lives. The Adams is a shallow, narrow river. You could walk across it at almost any point along its 11-kilometer course. But for 1 month out of every 4 years, the river turns red with hundreds of thousands of mating sockeye salmon. This year, almost 2 million sockeye have migrated here. They've come 500 kilometers through rivers, lakes, rapids, and fish ladders to return to the place of their birth. They've come home to spawn the next generation, and now they're on the very doorstep. But their trials are not over yet. The arrival of the sockeye attracts rainbow trout to the mouth of the Adams River. The trout feast on sockeye eggs that escape from nests and drift downstream. In turn, the trout attract anglers who crowd the mouth of the Adams. The salmon aren't eating, they won't take lures, but a great many are snagged by hooks that tear wounds in their flesh.
So number one, they don't target the salmon.
Scott Keane is an enforcement officer with Fisheries and Oceans Canada. He says the presence of the anglers intimidates the sockeye. Under ideal circumstances, the fish try to migrate up the river between 8 a.m. and 2 p.m. each day.
If the anglers are standing at the mouth of the river, they look like a large predator, and the salmon will hold off until the anglers leave. So we're trying to promote the anglers to fish away from the mouth of the Adams River off to the side, where they won't have that impact to the migration route of the sockeye.
The sight of this river swarming with sockeye is almost indescribable. At one time it's beautiful and tragic, delicate and powerful. It's no wonder that so many people are drawn here. The event has been made into a local festival called Salute to the Sockeye. This year, upwards of 500,000 tourists have come to the Roderick Haig Brown Conservation Area near Tsútswecw Lake, British Columbia. They've traveled from all over the world to witness the last heroic moments in the life of the sockeye, and to see the cycle of life played out before their eyes. Autumn colors frame the crystal mountain streams. This is a gorgeous place to be. Lucky visitors will meet Ernie Phillip. Ernie's a champion dancer, and he's an elder of the Little Tsútswecw First Nation. The paint on his cheeks depicts sockeye swimming between the banks of the Adams River.
I used to watch my granddad. You know, even there's thousands of salmon come through, and yet he used to get his first one, boarded and take back the bones and throw it into the river, and bless it, in sort of ways, that respect, Same thing with the deer, same thing with the black bear, that my folks, my granddad especially, wow, I used to see him. He used to shoot the deer, kneel down right away, and he used to say, I'm sorry I have to do this, but I have a hungry mouth to feed. That's a prayer. It's sacred with us, Same with the salmon. It's very, very sacred with us,
The annual migration of salmon used to define this place for humans and other creatures. But the First Nations people say that the number of Adams River sockeye we see now is just a shadow of what it once was. Years ago, there were big runs every year, not just once every 4. Europeans brought catastrophic change. Salmon stocks were decimated by the building of dams, by rock slides caused by railroad and other construction, by extensive logging in the river valleys, and by pollution. Commercial fishing caused declines in salmon numbers. Without regulation, and with today's technology, every last sockeye could be caught in fishing nets. As it is, for every 10 Adams River sockeye that begin the migration home, 8 are caught in nets in the Gulf of Alaska and Georgia Strait. There are many different agendas in operation. Local people have begun to value the salmon, and they work to preserve the one remaining big run of the Adams River sockeye. It brings revenue to the region from tourism. On the other hand, when twice as many sockeye arrived at the Adams River as were expected, some commercial fishermen complained about wasted fish. But nature has a use for all these sockeye, alive or dead. Every morning during the Adams River sockeye run, more salmon enter the river from Tsútswecw Lake. The fish swim upstream to the place where they were born. Females have waited at the river mouth until eggs developing inside their bellies matured. Males rested here as well to conserve energy for a final challenge, one that will likely include doing battle with other males. These fish are gasping, pulling water through their gills as quickly as possible, pumping all the oxygen they can into their tired muscles. They swim upriver in bursts, going a short distance between rest stops. Calm side channels provide a place to rest. It's easy to hang suspended in the crystal clear water. These sockeye are literally leaning on a gravel bar. Where the river runs fast, the sockeye hug the bank. They hang motionless below a small rapids. It takes very little energy for their streamlined bodies to hold this position and let the rushing waters carry oxygen through their gills. Each stretch of rapids is a challenge. This male gets about halfway up, then stops to gather more energy. He's off again, but he ends up sliding all the way back to the bottom of the rapid. Another try. This time, battered and bruised, he makes it. The fish finally reach a place where shallow water flows over a gravel bottom. This is perfect for nesting. The river is dotted with pairs of salmon as far as the eye can see. The female picks a spot where a brisk current will oxygenate her eggs. She lifts fine sediment by turning on her side and thrashing the riverbed with her tail. This opens up small cavities that become a nest. Eggs will lodge among larger stones. She lowers her anal fin to gauge the depth of the depression she has created. As she works, more than one male presents himself, hoping to be her mate. She'll choose the most persistent. He must earn the right to be her partner. Once he is chosen, the male hovers beside and slightly behind the female. He encourages her. He shudders. His whole body vibrates, sending her signals of excitement. As often as necessary, she fends off other females, including a neighbor who has entered her space. Any intruder might damage her nest. Her mate fends off other males with his sharp teeth and protruding jaws. Such battles leave white puncture wounds in flesh. Latecomers to the river must swim upstream past our pair and find their own nest sites. Next door, an old and battered female has finished spawning and is guarding her nests. Seeing a potential threat, our female attacks. The older fish takes the beating and holds her ground. She hasn't the energy to fight back. But if she gives in, her life's work could be undone. Another sockeye might dig up her eggs, releasing them into the current to become food for trout. She's come too far and endured too much to allow that to happen. Our female's attention turns back to her own nest. Her body is now in sync with that of her mate. This pair is ready to release their spawn. The female may deposit 1,000 eggs in a nest. Fertilization by the male occurs within seconds, and the eggs stay in place surprisingly well in the current. The female starts to dig again, slightly farther upstream. The sand and gravel she's moving drifts back to cover the eggs in her first nest. This new site is a second nest. The nest building process is repeated as many as 4 times. Altogether, the nests are called a redd. When she's finished depositing her eggs, she'll stand guard over the redd as long as she can. But neither parent lives long after the spawn. The battered next-door neighbor has reached the point where she has no energy left to hold her place in the current. With heart still beating, she simply floats away. Salmon bodies snag on branches or wash up on the riverbank. They become food for scavengers, black bears, eagles, and gulls. The bacteria and fungi that attacked the salmon when they entered fresh water 5 weeks ago blossoms now into a white fuzz that breaks down their flesh. Over time, 2 million sockeye become 6,000 metric tons of nutrients for the Tsútswecw lake ecosystem. The salmon have spent 3 years in the ocean storing nutrients in their bodies. Their migration home is a means of transporting those nutrients to fresh water. With the death and decay of the sockeye, these nutrients are released into the river and lake where they nourish plants and plankton. The plankton will feed the newborn salmon in their first year of life. This is one final gift to their offspring. Without the death of the parents, there could be no life for the young. The cycle is complete. The sockeye of the Adams River live in a precarious balance with the forces of nature and those of man. The fate of the run could easily be tipped by an accident which blocks the river, or by mistakes in management of the resource. The numbers tell the story. Each female Adams River sockeye deposits about 4,000 eggs into her nests in the riverbed. Just 800 of those eggs survive the first winter and hatch in spring to become what are called fry. A quarter of the fry survive their first year to become smolt, which swim to the salt waters of the Pacific Ocean. Most of these 200 smolt become food for killer whales, seals, and fish, or they're caught by high seas fishing fleets. In fact, only 10 sockeye return to the mouth of the Fraser River after 3 years of swimming in ocean currents. 8 of those 10 fully grown adults will be caught in commercial fishing nets or by native fishermen. In the end, only 2 sockeye from the original 4,000 eggs will come home to spawn in the Adams River 4 years after their birth. The odds of survival are very long, and if these Adams River sockeye are prevented from returning home just once, they'll be lost forever. But when Tsútswecw elder Ernie Phillips saw the river full of sockeye this year, he just couldn't help but be pleased.
I think it gives me back good feeling that the salmon somewhere, some way outsmart the human beings.